Hello everyone. You can't see my face, but it's Hannah at the Barkman branch, here to do the garden along with you all. So thank you so much for joining me this evening, and we are going to garden together with the succulent kits to go that we've had available from the 18th to the 22nd. So to get started, I have two bags in front of me, and you may have gotten one of two types of kits. One of them is a kit with the seeds, where you have to start the seeds from the germination process and begin it with the seeds in that way. The second one is with clippings from a jade plant donated by a very wonderful patron. Thank you so much. And with the jade plant clippings, it's going to be a little bit different because instead of growing something from a seed, you're going to be growing it from a clipping of a plant that already exists. So both the jade plant and then the plant with the seeds, it's going to either be a cactus or succulents. And cactuses and succulents are really great plants for having indoors and also for beginners. So succulents and cactuses don't need very much water at all. They need just sun and just a little bit of water about once a week. And you can usually leave them alone and they will do pretty well on their own. So I thought this would be a great kit to kind of liven up our very cold wintry outdoors with some happy gardening and green plants indoors. And these succulents can be kept indoors if you are more of a master planter, unlike me, and you choose later on to also transplant them to your yard if you're able to, or an outside pot. You're free to do that as well. So I'm not going to be showing you the entirety of the kit with the clippings, just because I want to save this for a patron. We have just a limited supply of kits available, but I will show you how to do the entire process with the seeds because it's a little bit more complicated. So in our clipping kit, you will get a pot with a hole right there in the center, and then also a drip tray for that pot, a wooden drip tray. And then you will get instructions on how to do the clippings, and you'll also get this soil. This soil is organic soil that's great for using for succulents and cactuses specifically, because it has the pearlite, which are those little white pieces of rock that you can see in there, and that helps with drainage. So that's really important for cactuses and succulents to have really good drainage. Make sure anytime you use a pot that it has a drainage hole and a drip tray, and make sure you have good soil with some perlite in it to make sure that the water drains out. So if you get this kit with the jade clippings, you might get one bigger one or two smaller ones. The important thing with the clippings is you may have to wait before you start gardening with them. So wait until you get a nice callus on the bottom of these plants. You can see here's where this one's been clipped off, and it's starting to dry up, but you're going to want to wait until it forms a little bit more of a callus over the bottom. And that will usually probably happen in about 1 to 2 weeks. So while you're waiting for it to form a callus, just let it dry in a dry, preferably warm spot somewhere in your home, and just give it some time to dry up a little bit more before you plant it. So once you get a nice callus on the bottom, the hardest thing about about these clippings is the waiting part, because once you get the callus on the bottom, it's really simple. You're just going to place them into your pot like so, with the sound effects. That's very important. And then you're just going to put planting soil around it, potting soil around it. And that's really all there is to it. So clippings can be really helpful for beginner gardeners because you already have the plant here, and it's going to take root once you have the callus right into the soil. So you don't have to worry so much about something sprouting. You already have the sprout. It's just a matter of getting the sprout to form those roots again that it had previously on the larger plant that the clipping came from. So you just put the clippings in, then you just put the potting soil around it, make sure it's secure, and then just water it very sparingly. The reason you want to water it sparingly, besides the fact that it's a succulent, is that while it's a clipping, we want to make sure that there's lots of ability for the roots to take hold in the dirt. So make sure you're not watering it, make sure you're not drowning it so the roots can't take hold into the dirt. Just water it very sparingly so that the mixture, the potting soil mixture, is only damp. So water it until it's just damp, and that'll give your little clippings roots a chance to take hold. And then water it normally about once a week or whenever you think it needs it. All right, so that is what it looks like for the clippings kit. And then again, the jade plant is a succulent, so it is still a succulent kit. And that is how you would do it with the clippings. All right, I'm talking a little fast, so let me slow down a little bit. It might be hard to follow along. Let's move on now to the actual seeds. So if you get seeds instead, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So let me show you all the materials you're going to need. Essentially what you're doing with the seed kit as opposed to the clipping kit is you're starting out with the seeds to actually get a sprout to begin. And you also need to mix some of the things of the soil together. Excuse me, you also need to mix some things together with the soil to get that good drainage soil that I showed. So let me pull out all of those items and I will show you what each of them are. They should all be labeled when you get your kit. Okay, so let me put this off to the side. There we go. In your kit, you should have the following things. You have a cute little sign here. It might be a bit hard to see, and that tells you when you sowed the seeds, so you can put the month, the day, the year. You could also put it on the back, and on the back, I would probably write a name for my plantee. So you could do that as well and use it as a cute little name tag and a reminder for when it was sowed. You're also going to get a planter, again with holes and with a drip tray. That's very important. And this is about the same size, slightly larger than the ones in the clipping kit, but works exactly the same with the holes to make sure you get good drainage. You're also going to get a packet for soil. Now the soil is a little bit different than the clippings one because it comes in a hard disc that we need to put water into. And we're also going to add some things to the soil. So the things that we want to add are pearlite. And again, that is that white rock. It's very cool. It kind of feels like limestone or like volcanic rock. And again, pearlite is really great because it helps us get better drainage in our soil. The other thing you're going to put into your soil is this kelp nutrition pack. And if you wanted with the clippings, the soil mixture is already pretty good on its own. If you wanted to get nutrition packs, you could. Nutrition packs are more important when you have seeds to really make sure they sprout and are happy. So we're going to mix that into our soil. And the last thing we have are our succulent or cactus seeds. So make sure you have all of those items in your kit before you get started. Again, if you're more of a master gardener and you want to use your own soil, go for it. If you want to use your own seeds, go for it. I will say, whether you got succulent or cactus seeds, I would suggest that you stick to the same type of seed in the same pot. So you can put multiple seeds into one pot, but you probably don't want to mix cactus and succulent seeds together. So if you have other succulent seeds and you have them here on the kit as well, feel free to mix those. Just don't intermix cactus and succulent seeds or any other kind of seeds. So don't plant herbs, flowers, that kind of thing along with your succulents. You will need a couple other common household materials to finish up with this kit. One thing you're going to need is some kind of stirring mechanism. I just have a normal tablespoon here. Spoon, plastic knife, chopstick, whatever you have that will help us stir the soil together. The other thing you're going to need is water. I have water in this cup, and then also in the cup below it, it's just a spot that I can put the soil into. So we're going to put the soil disc in here and then mix it with some water to make it moist. So just make sure you have water and then a spot to stir all of your soil there together. And then the last thing that you're going to need that's really, really helpful is some kind of plastic film, cling wrap, that kind of thing, and some scissors. When we're finished, something that can really help the germination process of seeds is to just lightly cover it with some plastic wrap. Remove it twice a day to make sure it's getting aired out well enough and keep it in a nice warm spot. And that kind of creates a really nice humid environment for the seeds to sprout in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this kit. We are going to start with our disc that is our soil. So go ahead and find that in your kit and pull it out. It's a little bit messy, so make sure you're doing this in a spot that you're okay with getting some dirt on it. So this is what your soil disc should look like. It's like a hard disc of soil. That's why it's called a soil disc. And we're going to place it just in our empty cup, not the cup with water, just our empty cup. or whatever receptacle, bowl, or anything like that you have. I'm also just going to dump, sometimes the soil gets a little bit loose from it, so I'm going to dump the loose soil that I have in my bag into here to make sure we get all the dirt. And I should have mentioned at the beginning, I am nowhere near a master gardener. I think the thing that I've kept alive longest is bamboo. I've had a rose plant, an indoor rose plant. I've had an orchid. I've had lots of things that I've killed. So I am not the know-all be-all of the succulent kits, but I thought it would be great for me to garden along with you. Seeing as this is a beginner's kit and I'm more of a beginner to gardening, we can have that journey together. So after we put our soil disc into the receptacle, we are going to just put a little bit of water into it. We want just enough water for it to become moist. So be very sparing with how much water we add. So I'm just going to add a little bit at a time. And then as you go along, you can kind of scoop and swirl the water around and make sure it's getting into that disc. I think I will need a little bit more. It's kind of fun to play with dirt and mud again. I feel like a kid. Did anyone else used to play with dirt and mud when they were a kid and make mud pies and that kind of fun stuff? All right, I'm adding a little bit more. I'm going to try to kind of break down the soil. And we want to break it out of this hard disc. It can still kind of be like in a disc shape, but we want to make sure we're like loosening the soil from that disc. And kind of push on it, and it's getting more moist, but it looks like I need some more. So here's kind of what my top layer is looking like. So that's looking pretty good, but I still have quite a lot of hard soil here. It's kind of hard to see, but I have some hard soil here below. So I'm going to add some more. And that might have actually been too much. Ooh, that might just be about perfect. I'm having a hard time because my disc is kind of stuck in the bottom of my cup. Come on, little disc. So if you have a bigger receptacle, that might work better for you. There we go. I got it flipped around. All right. And once this is nice and soft and all moist together, we're going to add the perlite and the nutrition pack to it. So here's where I'm at. I still have a little bit of the disc, you can see, but that's a good amount of nice moist soil in there. So it's kind of like baking. I'm better at baking than I am at gardening, but it's kind of like that. You know, you have like the hard butter, you got to soften it a little bit. Kind of pull at it, squish it down. You could also just leave it for a while if you wanted to just like put a little bit in, let it kind of soak it all up and come back 15-20 minutes later. You could do that as well. Alrighty, that's looking like some good moist soil. So that's more what it's looking like. You can see it's lost that disc shape and it's darker and more moist now. I'm going to add just one more tiny little drizzle for this little spot of dry. Oh, and I should have mentioned in this succulent kit, just like the clippings kit, you will get an instruction sheet. So don't worry if you miss a step or don't remember. You can always watch this. I think it's helpful to have a video of watching someone else do it, but you can always read the instruction kit too. Alrighty. That is some moist cup of soil right there. That looks pretty nice. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the kelp nutrition pack and just mix it lightly into the soil. Now this really feels like baking. We have our spices, right? Our nutrition is our spice for our plant. And hopefully this will help our little buddies grow. All right, so I'm just going to very lightly mix that in. Alrighty. And now we are going to add the perlite. It's a bit hard to see, but there will be labels on everything. So with the perlite, what we want to do is be really careful. We want to make sure that we mix it in evenly to the soil, but we want to make sure that we're not breaking up the rocks and making it really fine dust. So these rocks are very, very delicate. So just be gentle as you're going along. Try not to mush them up so that, you know, they're complete powder that you can't see. We do still want them to be at least somewhat large to help with drainage. They have a very cool texture to them. I would suggest maybe touching them if you're interested. They feel very cool. I don't really know how to describe it. Kind of volcanic-y is all I can think of. So here's what that looks like. Now I'm just going to very lightly fold it in together. Try not to squish the rocks too much. We need those rocks to do their job. Lost a little bit of my dirt. Oh no! I lost a lot of my dirt as soon as I said that. So that's what it looks like, all mixed up together. You can see the perlite in some spots, and it's still fairly large, which is perfect. Here's where it gets really exciting. We have our soil mixture, we have our nutrition and our perlite and our soil all mixed up. So now we are going to put it into our pot. And we want to make sure we leave about a 1/2 inch at the very top. I'm not going to measure, I'm going to kind of look with my eyeballs, but just make sure you leave a good amount of space, about a 1/2 inch, and don't fill the soil up exactly to the top. Leave some space there instead. So I'm going to scoop my dirt into my pot. And if you hate touching dirt, now might be a good time to wear like some gardening gloves or something like that, so you don't have to touch that mushy dirt. And you might not need all of it. You do want to pack it down a bit, but you don't want to like smash it down. So you don't need to pack it like brown sugar. Just kind of lightly tap it so it's all there together, not taking up a ton of empty space. So I'm going to stop there because that's a good amount of space. I do have a little bit of dirt left. So you may have a little bit of dirt, or depending on how wet your dirt gets, you might not have any left. All right, that's going to fall over. I'm just going to let it fall over. Okay, so here's what we have. You can see if you look at this angle, we have a good amount of space, so it has some room. And so now comes the very exciting part. That part was pretty exciting, but now comes the most exciting part. We are going to put our seeds into our dirt. Now the instructions actually say to place them on top of the soil. So don't do it where you do like vegetables where you shove it way in and put soil over it. Just place the seeds at the top of the soil and make sure each seed has ample room to grow. Don't crowd your pot. If you find that there's actually maybe not enough room for all of your seeds, you could also do that in another pot. Give them some room to grow in another pot. So it's kind of up to you. Let's see if I got all of mine. Yep. So here's what the seeds will look like. So we have these cool seeds that kind of look like apple seeds almost. And then we have these larger flat seeds. And then these little tiny adorable baby seeds. So I'm going to kind of plant them around the edge and give each of them enough room. And what I'm hoping is, with how many seeds I have, at least one of them will sprout, right? If I'm lucky. I can hope at least that I'll get at least one of these 6 or 7 little people to sprout. So I put the white and the black ones around the perimeter, and then these 2 smaller ones, these like circular brown ones. I don't know if you can see that. That's probably way too small to see. I'm going to put those more in the center and still space them out. But that's kind of how I got the best use of the space of my pot while giving each seed enough room. I did it around, and then 2 right in the middle with a good amount of room around each seed. So the really important thing with this too, I should have mentioned in the beginning, this is indoor gardening because we don't want these little seeds to blow away. Also, it's way too cold right now. But make sure you're planting this and germinating this inside since the seeds are just sitting at the top. We don't want any of your little buddies to fly away. So make sure you do it indoors. And that is it for actually starting your kit. So that's how you get started with the germination process. This is where you can put your tag in if you would like. You might also want to wait to put your tag in until they've sprouted because we are going to be covering it with plastic wrap. But if you want to write the date that you've sowed them, that'll be perfect. Leave it next to your pot for now, and that way you'll know when they've sown and see how many of them sprout. So now I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap. And again, with the plastic wrap, you want to make sure that you remove it twice a day so that it still gets good ventilation. So don't wrap this really tightly and don't wrap it constantly in plastic wrap. Make sure you remove it at least twice a day. And let me find my scissors. I'm going to cut it about in half. This is also a great time to start thinking of plant names. I love naming my plants. Or you might want to wait until you actually see what they look like. And maybe you'll think of a better name once you see what your little succulents and cactuses look like. I have problems with plastic wrap. I have no idea why. I've always struggled with plastic wrap, so that took me a little while. But here we have our sheet of plastic wrap, and we're just going to very lightly cover the top of our plant. And you can push it down a little bit just to keep it on, but again, don't make sure it's like smashed all the way down. Just leave it very loose so it gets some humidity while it doesn't get any mold or any gross stuff like that. We don't want any mold. So make sure to remove this plastic wrap twice a day. Also make sure that you place it in a spot where it receives lots of filtered sunlight. That says it as well as in the instructions. So if you can place this on a windowsill, on some piece of furniture that's close to a window, anything like that, make sure it receives lots of light. Remove the plastic wrap twice a day and let it air out for a bit. And then make sure that once it takes root, you will just water it once a week. So as you go right now with the seeds, just water it as the soil is starting to look really dry. But remember, just like with the jade clippings, we don't want it to be soaking wet. We just want it to be damp. So make sure you give it a nice damp soil to grow in. And then once it's actually sprouted and your little seeds have taken root, you can start watering it about once a week. So that's all I have for you. Hopefully that helps you start using these succulent, indoor succulent kits. And I hope that your little seeds sprout and that they give you some joy during this very long, cold winter. And hopefully we will get some greenery outside. But for the future, while we're still in winter, you at least will have some greenery inside. We would love to see what kind of little cactuses and succulents you get. So if you want to, feel free to post a photo on our Facebook or send us an email and show us how your indoor succulents are doing. All right, thanks so much for joining me and happy gardening.